So in this question we are given that n is an integer. We are asked if the value of 0.1 to the power n is greater than 10 to the power n. Now we can write this as 1 by 10 to the power n is greater than 10 to the power n. This gives us 1 by 10 to the power n is greater than 10 to the power n. Or we have to check if 1 is greater than 10 to the power 2n. That is 10 to the power 2n less than 1? So this is what we have to check. Now this can only happen when the values of n is negative. When the value of n is negative, then we can get 10 to the power 2n to be less than 1. If n is positive, then we have 10 to the power 2n will be greater than 1. So we now move on to check the sufficiency of statement 1. Now the statement 1 tells us that the value of n is greater than minus 10. If we draw a number line here, then suppose this is minus 10, this is 0. Here are the positive integers. Now as discussed in step 1, we know that the value of 10 to the power 2n will be less than 1 if n is negative. That means when n lies between this range, 10 to the power 2n will be less than 1. But when n is greater than 0, that is for this range, 10 to the power 2n will be greater than 1. So we are getting two contradictory answers. To understand this better, let's take an example where n is equal to 1. Then the value of 10 to the power 2n will be equal to 10 squared, which is 100. Now this is greater than 1. But when we take the value of n as minus 1, 10 to the power 2n will be equal to 10 to the power minus 2, which is equal to 1 by 100, and the value of 1 by 100 is less than 1. So the answer to the question would be no, and from here the answer to the question would be yes. Since we are getting two contradictory answers, so we can conclude that statement 1 is insufficient. Again, let's check the sufficiency of statement 2. Now in statement 2 we are given that the value of n is less than 10. Now again, if we draw the number line, we have 10 here, 0 here, and all the negative integers on this side. Now as discussed in step 1, when the value of n lies between this range, that is between 0 and 10, then 10 to the power 2n will be greater than 1. But when the value of n lies on the left hand side of 0, then 10 to the power 2n will be less than 1. We again take values and try to understand. Suppose n is equal to 1 in this case, then 10 to the power 2n will be 10 squared, which is equal to 100, and this is greater than 1. So the answer to the question would be no, that 0.1 to the power n is not greater than 10 to the power n. But when we take the value of n as minus 1, 10 to the power 2n will be equal to 10 to the power minus 2, which is 1 by 100 and which is less than 1. So we can answer that yes, 0.1 to the power n is greater than 10 to the power n. Again we get contradictory answers, so we conclude that statement 2 is also insufficient. So we now move on to check the sufficiency of both the statements together. Now in step 3, from the statement 1, we have that when n took a positive value, the answer to the question was no. But when n took a negative value, the answer to the question was yes. Again, from statement 2, we have that when n took a positive value, we got no as an answer, and when n took a negative value, the answer to the question was yes. Since in both the cases we took minus 1 and 1 as the possible values, we can see that after combining the two statements also, we would not get a sufficient answer. Hence the correct answer is option E.